Heidi-ho, and welcome back as we continue to dig into the nefarious happenings surrounding the cheerleaders of Shadyside. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Second Evil by R.L. Stine. If you haven't seen my first review, go back and see that one. Unfortunately, this book was no better than the first. It was actually worse than the first. There was one aspect that I really enjoyed because we got into a little bit of history about what the evil is in Shadyside, but this book, nothing really happened. I probably finished it in 30 minutes and I skipped half of it. There's a very large lack of development, and it's so sad because I remember loving R.L. Stine books. Personally, I don't think they aged well, which is just too bad. Because I was thinking, there are other books that I've read recently. Time Windows, Ella Enchanted, Time for Andrew, Pale Phoenix, which is the sequel to Time Windows. Those are middle grade novels, and they still struck a chord with me today. Yes, they were way below my reading level, but they were engaging, they were well written, they had substance, and this one's just, it lacked development. I did read somewhere, because that one backstory element that I was talking about, I was like, I thought that there was more to it. So I was researching that, and as I was researching that, the book that the larger amount of backstory belongs to, it apparently was written by a ghostwriter, and it seems that, according to that person at least, a good bit of the Fear Street novels were written by ghostwriters, so maybe that's the problem. I still could not tell you why I loved this series so much when I was younger, if it's written by a ghostwriter, and then that was the problem, that R.L. Stine wasn't putting his effort into it, and so you could see a clear lack of quality. Anyways, you see the first book. Little bit of review is that in the first novel, we met Bobbi and Corky Corcoran. They are sisters that just transferred to Shadyside from Missouri. And they are, what do you think they are? Cheerleaders. Bobbi ends up dying, and there is an evil that is unleashed. So we are left knowing that even though Corky thought she destroyed the evil, she did not. We pick up in this book with 3 of the cheerleaders driving past the Fear Street Cemetery where they spot Corky. So we have Kimmy, who is the new cheerleading captain, and her 2 best friends, Debra and Ronnie, and they're just talking about how different Corky has become since Bobbi's death and how she often goes to the cemetery to visit Bobbi. Debra has gotten into the occult ever since this whole evil spirit thing has happened. And I want to take a moment here and say, this poor town, I'm surprised this town even exists anymore with the amount of havoc the evil wreaks on it. And Fear Street in general. At what point are they going to realize it is not safe to live on Fear Street? But I think that would have been a really interesting take if we wanted to elevate the Fear Street saga and just be like, there's something hinky about this town. We got to figure out, how are we going to navigate this situation? Maybe it just needs to become a ghost town. But that's neither here nor there. That was just a thought I had, was that, good night, how do people survive in this town? And we switch into Corky's brain. Corky is she's so sad about the loss of her sister. She has acknowledged the fact that she's not sleeping well and she's having all kinds of nightmares. The next thing we know, Bobbi is rising up out of her grave. She's skeletal, she's decaying, only for Corky to realize she was having another nightmare. Then this creepy guy appears and she starts booking it out of there. When she stumbles across the other 3 girls, there's nobody there. And she's just like, did I imagine that? And the girls, particularly Kimmy, are trying to convince her that she needs to rejoin the cheerleading squad. They go back to her house. And the one thing that I felt like we needed in the last book and that we continue to need in this book is the family element. It's largely not present. There is a younger brother named Sean who is kind of a pain in the neck, but I would have liked to have seen the grieving process of the family because they just lost a daughter and a sister. But the only person who seems to be affected is Corky. Corky brings all the girls back to her house and they're trying to convince her that she needs to rejoin the cheerleading squad. Why? I don't know. None of them were particularly nice to her the prior year. And of course, they're all admitting they were jealous and all that good stuff. But I seriously couldn't buy their rationale that she needs to rejoin the cheerleading squad. She eventually does say, maybe I will, for two reasons. One, I need something to preoccupy my time. Two, not really a spoiler, but basically impetus is this evil spirit is still here and I need to figure it out, and I think it's connected to the cheerleading squad. So for her, I'm like, all right, I guess I'll buy this whole, like, let me do something to get my mind off of my sister's death. But the other girls, honestly, I didn't buy their desire to have her come back to the squad. However, they're at her house and they're chatting the whole thing through. Kimmy and Ronnie leave, but Debra, because she's all into the occult now, she's like, I need to talk to Corky because I know the evil is still around. The irony of this situation, thinking back on it, is the last book ended with her coming home, trying to get into bed, only to find the pennant of the girl who had been injured, the cheerleader who had been injured and had since died, in her bed, and basically the evil still lives. So she knows the evil is still around, but at this moment, I guess she's forgotten because Debra is like, the evil is still here. And Corky's like, let's just put a cap on this. She goes into the kitchen because she had been boiling water to make hot chocolate. One thing about the evil is it loves to scald people. Like, there's a motif of boiling water. She's trying to pour the water and she pours it all over her hand. She's paralyzed, she cannot move, and so she burns herself. We pick up with her boyfriend Chip coming to visit her. I thought this was really strange. Chip had been dating Kimmy. They break up, I don't know at what point in the first novel. They break up only for him to start pursuing Bobbi. There's already bad blood between Kimmy, Bobbi, and Corky. So then, obviously, Bobbi dies, and now in this novel, Corky is dating Chip. The explanation is that he was a shoulder for her to cry on when she needed one. They eventually became really close and started dating. I'm so glad that whoever wrote this book acknowledged how weird it is that he went from dating Bobbi to Corky in a matter of months. Again, I wish something had been done differently. It didn't make sense to me, but nobody asked my opinion, which is why I'm giving it to you. Chip comes over and Sean is like, yeah, she's upstairs and she's with Kimmy. And he's like, oh great, she's with Kimmy? He can't get away. So he goes upstairs and he greets Corky, and Kimmy's like, not that I'm not here either. And Kimmy jet sets and Corky has this chat about what really happened and how she's going to rejoin the cheerleading squad and about the evil. Chip had a little experience with the evil in the first novel where he had become paralyzed. So I don't really know how much he's buying into it, but he humors her. Corky says, Chip, before I do any of this, I want you to do a favor for me. He's like, what do you want? She goes, please come with me to the cemetery because I need to talk to Bobbi one last time and tell her what's happening. They go to the cemetery, and up behind a gravestone, so there's a particular gravestone for a woman named Sarah Fear. Hers was the grave that cheerleader had fallen on in the first book, and that is how the evil was unleashed. So up out of the grave comes this woman. Turns out not a ghost, just a young woman named Sarah Beth Plummer. And she's saying that she's doing grave rubbings for class, and of course she saved everything for last minute. Corky goes to cheerleading practice, And every time the cheerleaders start to cheer, she hears screaming in her head. She gets out of there. I don't know, like, I was unable to suspend belief for some reason, because I just kept thinking, how weird is that? The things people would be thinking and saying about her, I can't handle this, but whatever. So she gets out of there. Kimmy tries to console her and say, hey, come back to practice, come back to the squad. We really want you to join the squad. And she says, well, I can't actually come this day because I have a makeup test, because I guess she missed a lot of school due to Bobbi's death. She goes to take her makeup test. And again, I just could not suspend my belief. I tried really hard, guys, but there's so much of this novel that we did not need, which is why I got through it in like 30 minutes. She's in the classroom, and her teacher, who apparently, even though he's young and he's kind of cool, he's like really difficult. He's hard on his students. But he looks at her and he goes, I gotta go pick up my car from the shop, so I'm gonna leave you here to take this test all by yourself. Like, so this tough teacher is just gonna let her do a makeup test all on her own? Whatever the case, funny things start to happen in this classroom, and she's just like, the evil is back. So she races down the hall because she needs to get to Chip, who said he would wait for her. So she goes down the hall to the shop room, only to find Chip dead on the floor because he'd cut off his own hand. Later, I forget where exactly this happened, but the girls aren't so convinced. Like, at least Corky and Debra, and I think Kimmy was there as well, they're not so convinced that this was an accident, because even the doctor says that he died due to shock, and that's how he bled out without going to get help. Debra, whoever it was like, that doesn't explain why he cut through his wrist. Like, at some point, maybe if it was a slip, he would have cut himself, but like, why would he have gone all the way through? They're just not convinced that this was an accident, and Corky is 100% convinced that this was the evil. Like, the evil has reappeared. She just has to figure out who it's in. Debra says, well, you know what? I know exactly where we need to go for this. They go to the Fear Street mansion. So in the world of Fear Street, the Fear family started it all. And they were very, very wealthy, but at some point their mansion burned down. So she's like, that's where we need to go. We need to go to that mansion, and we need to hold a seance. She and Corky go. They think they've summoned a spirit, only to realize it was a dog. What they do witness is Sarah Beth Plummer at the cemetery, and she is with the creepy guy who we have established. So the girl from the first novel who had been possessed by the spirit, her name was Jennifer Daly. He is her brother. Okay, what's going on here? Looks like she's doing a dance of the devil on top of Sarah Fear's grave. Like, what is happening? He had already approached Corky, so he approached her the day that she had gone to cheerleading practice. He was like, ooh, I'm the evil spirit, and this was just strange. I understand the direction that whoever wrote this book was going, because we're trying to end our chapters on cliffhangers, and we're trying to make things super creepy and weird. But why is he racing after her like he's going to hurt her, with this crazy look on his face and all this kind of stuff, and then be like, yes, I'm the evil, only for him to just basically be like, I'm gonna be your evil, because I don't believe your story about how my sister died. I believe you killed my sister, and I'm gonna prove it. Well, I mean, honestly, the thing is, so Jennifer basically died in that bus accident. Months go by with her inhabited by this spirit. Months of her walking around and people talking to her and interacting with her, of her going home and sleeping in her own bed. And then when the spirit is finally expelled, she like dust to dust. She just becomes a desiccated skeleton. How do you explain that? You cannot tell me that Corky did something in that graveyard when she defeated the spirit, and for Jennifer to go into whatever form she would have been in had she properly died the night she died. Yeah, I mean, how do you put that on Corky? So I get, again, what this writer was trying to do, but because I could not suspend my belief, it made it very difficult. Now, there's all kinds of suspicion. Corky and Debra decide to confront Sarah Beth. They go to where Sarah Beth, well, actually, first, they decide to go to Jennifer's house to talk to the brother, only to learn that the brother has gone missing. Then they go to Sarah Beth's house. Debra realizes all of these letters have been addressed to Sarah Fear. Sarah Beth admits that she is actually a Fear, but she goes by her mother's maiden name. She's already told Chip and Corky what she knows about Sarah Fear, because remember, they met her at the graveyard and she was telling them that she was doing some grave rubbings, and that Sarah Fear and 4 others had drowned on a seemingly perfect day when their boat capsized, and not only had they drowned, but it looked like they'd been boiled to death. Now that they realize that she's a Fear, she goes into a little bit more depth about how there had been rumors that she was having an affair with one of her attendants. Her husband had died unexpectedly. She had become something of a recluse, but there was also other rumors going on around about her. This is the information that I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. I remember there being more, at which point that's when I started Googling, and it's actually from A New Awakening, which again, I probably will never get to after experiencing what I've read so far. Corky finally comes back to the squad. Things go really well at practice, and they get to the game. It's halftime, and they are doing their stunt only for Kimmy to fail to catch Corky. And Kimmy's like, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. Corky goes to the hospital. She has broken her arm and other minor injuries. She comes home. Her mom draws her a bath. And at this point, I totally related to Corky because there was a period of my life where I had broken both of my wrists at the same time. So there was things that I could not do for myself. And she was just like, oh, how far I have fallen that my mother is having to help me get undressed. Her mom walks out. She starts to get ready to get into the bath, only for her to turn around and Kimmy's there. And she's like, Kimmy, what are you doing here? And I'm thinking the same thing. How did Kimmy get there? How did the mother not see Kimmy? How did nobody notice that Kimmy was in this house? Well, what do you think is happening? Kimmy is possessed by the spirit. She's been possessed ever since the spirit came out of Jennifer in the graveyard. She basically has just been going after all of Kimmy's enemies. Kimmy's kind of a split personality. So the spirit is inhabiting Kimmy and I think seeking vengeance on anybody who has wronged Kimmy. Jennifer's brother, by the way, has been found and he has drowned in Fear Lake, which, why? Actually, I think I do remember why, which I'll get to. Chip had to die because they broke up and then he goes after Bobbi and then he goes after Corky. So naturally he had to go. The brother had to die because he was getting too close to the truth. Apparently the brother, even though he was very troubled, somehow stumbled across the truth, even though he believed that Corky had killed his sister. Maybe that's something that I missed when I was skimming, but I don't think so. Corky just had to die because Corky needed to die. There was really no good explanation as to why Corky had to die. She was supposed to have died in the graveyard and she didn't, so now she has to die again. There is a struggle. Corky holds Kimmy's head underwater until this nasty green ooze liquid slime flows out of her and down the drain. Kimmy's like, where am I? And it seems the last thing she remembers was being in the graveyard. The mom shows up and she's like, Kimmy, what are you doing here? which is a very good question that I have already asked myself. Except for the fact that she was possessed by an evil spirit, so maybe she can transport herself. Kimmy's parents are called, Kimmy goes home, and Corky is just like, all right, we're good to go here, only for her to receive a message that says, it can't be drowned. Oh, well, I will say, actually, to rewind just a minute, she was able to overpower Kimmy because of the thought of her brother Sean. I had found somebody who actually did some pretty decent reviews on these books because I was wanting some information on some other books, like the genesis of the fears, because I just could not remember why all of this was happening. His question was, like, Sean was so inconsequential. There was no relationship in the first book between the sisters and Sean. There was very little relationship here between Corky and Sean. Sean was just an annoying little brother, although I did find it interesting that we brought back this idea of them being pranksters, because in the very beginning of the first Evil, Bobbi is known for playing all these pranks, and my question was, why does it matter? Because it didn't go anywhere, it didn't do anything. So apparently one time when Corky sits down on a whoopee cushion, it's because they're just a bunch of pranksters. So I thought that was interesting that we brought that a little bit more full circle. It wasn't as off-center as I thought it was going to be when it came to Corky being like, I need to survive for my brother, because she pictured his sad face. I skimmed, so I probably missed it, but I was like, when did he have a sad face? Because it doesn't seem like they had much interaction in general, but then when they did have an interaction, he was like, why aren't you playing with me? You're a jerk. There was not much love lost between them. That is the second Evil. It just absolutely breaks my heart how little I care for these novels. We'll see what happens in the third Evil tomorrow. So have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.